Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth, and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and prosperity of our nation. Amen.
Oath or affirmation announcements by the President.
Honourable Senators, I have granted leave of absence to Senator the Honourable Alison West, Senator the Honourable Dennis Moses, and Senator Foster Cummings, all of whom are out of the country. Honourable Senators, I have received the following correspondence from Her Excellency the President, Paula May Weeks. The Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, by Her Excellency Paula May Weeks, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. To Ms. Alicia Romano. Whereas Senator the Honourable Alison West is incapable of performing her duties as a senator by reason of her absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Alicia Romano, to be temporarily a member of the Senate, with effect from the 11th of April 2018 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator, the Honourable Alison West. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President, St. Anne's, this 10th day of April 2018. To Ms. Ayana Lieber Lewis. Whereas Senator the Honourable Dennis Moses is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ayana Lieber Lewis, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 11th of April 2018 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator, the Honorable Dennis Moses. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President St. Anne's this 10th day of April 2018. To Mr. Ndale Young. Whereas Senator Foster Cummings is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago, now therefore I, Paula May Weeks, President as aforesaid, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ndale Young, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 11th of April 2018 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator Foster Cummings. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President St. Anne's this 10th day of April 2018. Honourable Senators are required to take the oath.
I, Alicia Romano, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
I, Ayanna Lewis, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
I, Ndale Young, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do solemnly affirm that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago and will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibility to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Honourable Senators, I have received the following correspondence from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. April the 9th, 2018, Dear President of the Senate, appointment to joint select committees. At a sitting held on Monday, April the 9th, 2018, the House of Representatives agree to the following resolution. Be it resolved that the House agree to the following appointments to joint select committees. Mrs. Vidya Gayadeen Gopi Singh, in lieu of Mr. Prakash Ramada on the Joint Select Committee on Finance and Legal Affairs. Mr. Barry Padarath, in lieu of Mrs. Vidya Gayadeen Gopi Singh on the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity, and Dr. Rudal Munilal, in lieu of Mr. Prakash Ramada on the Joint Select Committee on National Security. I respectfully request that the Senate be informed of the above at the earliest convenience, please. Respectfully, Honorable Bridget Mary Anissa George, Speaker of the House.
Bills brought from the House of Representatives, petitions, papers.
Mr. Vice President.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers listed on the order paper in my name. The 30th Annual Report of the Integrity Commission of Trinidad and Tobago for the year 2017.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers listed on the order paper in my name. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries to the 11th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session, 2016-2017, 11th Parliament on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Land Settlement Agency for the financial years 2008 and 2009. Thank you.
Attorney General.
Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper and supplemental order paper in my name. Firstly, the ministerial response of the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs to the 13th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session 2016-2017, 11th Parliament on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016 with specific reference to the Ministry of Finance. Secondly, the statement of the Attorney General related to the activities in Trinidad and Tobago of Cambridge Analytica, Aggregate IQ or AIQ, and the Strategic Communications Laboratories SCL Group and their affiliate companies, together with a compilation of relevant documentation and materials.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers as listed on the order paper and supplemental order paper. In the name of the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Finance, and in my own name. The annual report of the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board for the period October 1st, 2013 to September 30th, 2014. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Finance to the 12th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session 2016-2017, 11th Parliament on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016. The ministerial response of the Ministry of Finance to the 13th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session 2016-2017, 11th Parliament on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016, with specific reference to the Ministry of Finance. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Mayaro Rio Claro Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2005. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Princeton Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2014. The 106th report of the Salaries Review Commission of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, determination of the salary and other conditions of service for the offices of Commissioner of Valuations and Assistant Commissioner of Valuations, Ministry of Finance. The ministerial report of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to the 12th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session 2016-2017, 11th Parliament, on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016. And finally, Madam President, the second ministerial report of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to the 14th report of the Public Accounts Committee, second session 2016-2017, 11 Parliament on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2016, with specific reference to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries.
Reports from committees, urgent questions.
Senator Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. To the Honorable Minister of National Security. Having regard to reports that approximately 200 Venezuelan nationals enter our shores daily through illegal ports of entry, what role, if any, has law enforcement been playing in curbing this growing problem?
Minister of National Security, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, together with the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, have established land-based coastal patrols around Trinidad and Tobago in the southwestern area from Icacos, Quinam, Lucero, Moruga, Baguari, Galeota, in the northeastern area, Toco, Matlat, Paria, Blanchishes, all the way down to Scotland Bay and the western side. They've also established land-based coastal patrols along the western side of Trinidad and Tobago, in particular around the area from Mbacadere all the way up to Point Lisas and beyond. So there are a number of land-based coastal patrols taking place by joint Army and police patrols. Additionally, in the southwestern in particular, we also include the Customs Preventative Branch. So there are 3 agencies involved in land-based patrols. On the maritime side, the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard continues to patrol the waters around Trinidad and Tobago. In particular, in the Gulf in particular, we have, based on our re-establishment of the bilateral cooperation with Venezuela, there is now direct contact between the commanding officer of the Triton Fountain Coast Guard and the commanding officer of the Guardia Nacional and the Guardia Costa, so that they're talking to one another and patrolling our maritime waters. And those are all with an event to streamline to prevent illegal entry through our waters and our borders in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President.
Madam President, given the information released by the Honorable Minister as it concerns the number of land-based coastal patrols around the country, the invasion of refugees continues unabated. Could the Honorable Minister therefore indicate to this Honorable House what further measures will be adopted to address this growing refugee crisis?
Minister of National Security.
Madam President. Madam President, there are also discussion at the level of Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the counterpart in Venezuela to deal with issues of, especially people from Venezuela coming into Trinidad and Tobago. We have also established contact with the coastal villages, Peradinales, Tucupita, Guira, and so on the ground to get information as to people moving backward and forward. We also have done utilizing our coastal radar surveillance system and also our fixed-wing aircraft in terms of surveillance. So there's a combination of events, a combination of initiatives to treat with that. Additionally, Madam President, you will notice that from time to time there are raids between the immigration authorities and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in areas and known areas around Trinidad and Tobago where illegals tend to gather, and so several arrests have been made within recent times. As a matter of fact, Madam President, the Immigration Detention Center right now has about almost in the areas about 90-something illegal Venezuelans, and we are in the process of negotiating. We have negotiated with the Venezuelan ambassador to move to repatriate these people back to Venezuela as soon as possible. Madam President.
Senator Mark.
Honorable President, the question I'd like to pose to the Honorable Minister of National Security is simply this. consistent with our international obligations and given the need for urgent legislation to address the refugee crisis, as well as the migrant crisis, can the Honourable Minister indicate whether the government intends to introduce legislation to address both the refugee as well as the migrant labour crisis?
Minister of National Security.
Madam President, the legislation with respect to refugees is in fact under review right now. The government is in contact with UNHCR and discussions taking place with respect to that legislation.
Next question, Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. To the Minister of National Security, in light of recent developments where Trinidadian fishermen were arrested by the Venezuelan Guardia Nacional and have appeared in a Venezuelan court, can the Minister give an update on the matter?
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, with respect to the Trinidad and Tobago citizens, Mr. Nicholas Nanlal Hajari, Mr. Awadnat Hajari, and Mr. Shami Supasad, yesterday at the First Instance Criminal Court for State and Municipal Control Functions at Tucupita, Judge Romley Medina Farias at 2:56 p.m. released the nationals. So they have been released. They appeared before the court and they have been released. Arrangements are being made right now to return them to Trinidad and Tobago, in particular to the Sidras port of entry.
Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, in light of reports that there are issues regarding the legality of the arrest of these individuals, that they were actually captured on Trinidadian water, is the Minister launching any investigation into this issue?
Minister of National Security.
Madam President, at the level of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, investigation is taking place with of course, two Foreign Affairs counterpart. But, Madam President, one must also understand that the nationals were released from the court without any conviction. We continue to investigate.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, having regard to the growing concerns of the local fishermen in Sidras that the La Guardia Nacionals are demanding U.S. currency and food for releases of fishermen, can the Minister indicate whether or not this problem is going to be dealt with so that this does not occur again?
Senator Hussain, I will not allow that question. Next question, Senator Hussain.
To the Honorable Prime Minister, in light of recent developments where the appointment of the Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development was revoked based on new information, can the Prime Minister inform the Senate of such information?
Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, as we are all aware, every ministerial appointment is within the sole discretion of the Honourable Prime Minister. As was announced yesterday, the Honourable Prime Minister has appointed a very specially formulated committee with the right asset base to do a thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding the facts with respect to this matter, and the Honourable Prime Minister will await the outcome of that report, what is found in that report, and we ask that the rest of the population also do so, because we will then release the necessary facts and what is found in that report to the public at the appropriate time.
Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, in light of the dismissal of the Minister and also the announcement by the Prime Minister that he has confidence in this Minister, can the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister confirm whether or not any misconduct has taken place by the former Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development?
Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister.
Madam President, as I just outlined, the way this government operates is a full investigation is taking place. When the report coming out of that full investigation is presented to the Honourable Prime Minister, he will then discuss the matters related and coming out of that report.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, can the Minister give the Senate the terms of reference of that committee that was appointed to investigate this matter, please?
Minister in the office of the Prime Minister.
No.
No terms of reference.
Madam President, standing order 46.1, the answer is not relevant to the question.
You all in fact.
Senator Obika, that standing order does not apply in these circumstances, okay? Next.
Standing order 46.4, the member just made some insulting inferences to my academic record. And let me correct the record. I have a first degree in economics and a master's in finance. Know the record. Correct.
Honorable Senators and Senator Obika, you are not permitted, listen to my words very carefully, you are not permitted to behave as you just did, and I will not tolerate a recurrence of that. If you are seeking any sort of redress, look to me and do it in an appropriate manner. What you just did was inappropriate, okay?
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the government is pleased to announce it will be answering all the questions listed here, save and except 3, and we ask for the deferral of these 3. Question number 64, question number 74, and question number 92. With regards to written answers, we would like to have a deferral of question number 78. We're not using them.
The second. So questions number 74, 92, and the written questions number 74, 92, and the written question number 78 are deferred for 2 weeks. Senator Mark, you wanted to raise something?
Yeah. Did I hear the Honourable Leader of Government Business, Madam President, said question 64? Oh, well, no, you're answering it. Okay. No, I just wanted to know.
You're answering question number 64.
We are not in a position to answer question number 64, and we seek the indulgence of the Senate to have it deferred a second time, if it so pleases this House.
Madam President, I am not inclined to accept that. You have already given him a 2 weeks arrangement, and I would ask you to invoke the appropriate standing order.
Honourable Senators, standing order.
Standing order 27.
Well, if you don't want me to make a pronouncement, Honourable Senators, Standing Order 2715 will be invoked. 2716, I apologize. Senator Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. Question number 62 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Answer to part 1. Sorry, Madam President. The law firm used to provide legal services for the acquisition and purchase of the Galleon's Passage was Haynes & Boone, CDG. Haynes & Boone, CDG is the product of a merger in 2016 between Haynes & Boone of the United States, one of the largest and most highly regarded U.S. law firms, and CDG of the United Kingdom. Haynes & Boone has offices in Texas, New York, California, Chicago, Denver, Washington, London, Mexico City, and Shanghai. The firm provides a full spectrum of legal services in technology, financial services, energy, and private equity. CDG, or Curtis Davies Garrard of the United Kingdom, has built a significant reputation over the last 20 years serving the shipbuilding and offshore and oil and gas sectors globally. Its shipbuilding clients consist of ship owners, charterers, and shipyards covering the entire spectrum of commercial shipping, including international superyachts sector. On the offshore side, its clients include major oil and gas companies with worldwide development interests, smaller independents, offshore contractors, providing a range of exploration and production services. The merged firm, Haynes & Boone CDG, has 600 lawyers in its 15 offices and 40 major legal practices. Answer to part 2. The total legal fees paid to Haynes & Boone for A, advising the National Infrastructure Development Company on the applicable law, B, seeking NIDCO's interest in the purchase of the vessel, C, negotiating and settling with the seller the terms and conditions of the purchase agreement and modified Norwegian sales form for the vessel, and D, attending and acting as agent for the National Infrastructure Development Company in the completion of the purchase, and E, arranging for the registration of the vessel with the Vanuatu Ship Registry as the Galleon's Passage in NIDCO's name as a new owner, pending registration with the Trinidad and Tobago Ship Registry. Total fees for all of that was £45,200. Answer to part 3. The names of the lawyers from Haynes & Boone CDG that represented NIDCO in the transaction were Mr. Andreas Nicholas Silcher, a specialist in maritime and shipping law, and Ms. Krisa Kitsu, who has experience of arranging the delivery of over 40 new-building vessels from a wide range of Asian shipyards.
Could the Honorable Finance provide this Senate with a detailed breakdown of the 45,000? Is it pounds, he said, sir? Could he provide this Honorable Senate with a detailed breakdown of the 45,000 pounds as requested by the question?
Minister of Finance.
Yes, Madam President, I will send to the Honourable Senator every hour, every day, every place, and everything that the two lawyers did for the 45,000 pounds.
Senator Mark.
Madam President, I think you need to rule on this matter. This is a question that you have approved, and we would like the Honourable Minister to adhere to the rules of this House. We have asked him for the detailed breakdown. I didn't ask him to send it to me privately. I have asked him, with your approval, to provide this House. Madam President, with your leave, I have asked him to provide a detailed breakdown of the 45,000 pounds. Not to give it to me privately. Is this to give you and the House? Madam President, could you help me on this matter?
Minister of Finance.
Madam President, I will provide the Senate with the date, the hour, the time, and the things that the lawyers worked on.
Madam President, could I ask through you to the Minister, when would that information be provided to you and this Honourable Senate?
Minister.
Before the next sitting of the Senate.
Senator Mark, this is your last supplementary.
Could the Honourable Minister indicate whether any lawyers from Trinidad and Tobago were involved in this transaction?
Senator Mark, that question does not arise.
But the answer is no anyway.
Next question, Senator Mark.
Am I asking, not 64, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know why they are hiding. But we will get to that shortly. Question number 65 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. The companies that conducted valuation reports on the galleon's passage in November 2017 and December 2017, respectively, were Oceanic Design and Survey of Australia and Schulte Marine Concept of China. For the benefit of honorable senators, Madam President, Oceanic Design and Survey is an AMSA-accredited marine design and survey firm located in Queensland, Australia. It is accredited in marine surveying of new build and existing vessels of steel, aluminium, and fiberglass construction, propulsion systems, stability, load line, and MARPOL, which is short for marine pollution. Apart from being accredited by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, which is AMSA, it is a member of the Marine Surveyors Association, Marine Queensland, the Board of Professional Engineers of Queensland, and the Royal Institution of Naval Architects. Schulte Marine Concept, the second valuer, is the new building arm of Bernard Schulte Ship Management, or BSM. Madam President, BSM is an integrated global maritime solutions leader with more than 130 years' experience in the shipping industry. It manages a fleet of 600 vessels with 20,000 employees through a network of 10 ship management and 26 crew service companies worldwide and 5 wholly owned maritime training centers across the world. SMC, a subsidiary of BSM, provides for BSM a comprehensive spectrum of project-tailored technical and management services and value-added end-to-end solutions for new building, conversion, and retrofit projects, as well as for fleets in service. SMC operates through permanent regional offices in Shanghai, China, its head office, and in Hong Kong, and through dedicated site offices spread throughout the world's shipbuilding markets. Answer to part 2. There was no direct cost for the valuation conducted by Oceanic Design and Survey in November 2017, since this came with a package of documentation for the vessel arising from the construction of the vessel for its previous Venezuelan client. It is to be noted that Oceanic Design and Survey valued the vessel at US $19 million. The cost of the valuation done by Schulte Marine Concept in December 2017 for the government of Trinidad and Tobago was US $4,500. It is to be noted that Schulte Marine Concept valued the vessel at US $35 million.
Senator Mark?
Yeah, let us get a little more comprehensive now. Madam President, through you, this Senate would like the minister to table forthwith the report.
As a question?
Yeah. Madam
That's a
President, through you,
question.
I am asking through you that the minister, if the minister rather, based on his submission, can make available those 2 reports by Oceanic Design and Survey Limited and Schulte Marine or Maritime, whatever you call it, that organization's report. Can you make those 2 valuation reports available forthwith to this Honorable House?
Minister of Finance?
Madam President, I would seek the approval of Cabinet, and once Cabinet agrees, I would have no hesitation in tabling those 2 documents, which will then confirm that the vessel was valued at $19 million by one valuer and at US $35 million by the other firm, which has the 20,000 employees and the 130 years of shipping experience.
Madam President, is the minister aware that the Prime Minister is on record a short while ago indicating that the government of this country has been fully transparent and accountable to this country on all fronts? So why, Madam President, through you, Madam President, why, Madam President, would the minister require Cabinet's permission when the Prime Minister has said the government is open and transparent? So therefore, can the minister reconsider his position, given the Prime Minister's position, and table those reports forthwith in this Parliament?
Senator Mark, in response to your supplementary questions 2, 3, and 4 that you just raised, they are not allowed. Next question.
I don't know how your cabinets operate.
Madam President, on behalf of my colleague Senator Roach,
Mahabir,
question.
yeah, would you like me to stand down the questions and then come back to it? Just in you can ask it? All right. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am grateful to the government for deferring the question last week, but unfortunately Senator Roach is not here, so I think I can pose it on his behalf today, and the government has indicated that they are prepared to answer. Do I read the question, Madam President?
No, just
okay.
the number.
Question number 70 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs on behalf of Senator Roach.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, with regards to question 70, the total revenue earned was $380,000 Trinidad and Tobago dollars, as detailed below. I will read out event and then the rent alone. The event is Breakfast Island, rent alone $30,000. Event Ladies Night Out, rent alone $60,000. Event Last Jam, rent alone $30,000. Event Punchy Punch, rent alone $30,000. Event Marshall Monday, rent alone $200,000. Event Humor Vibes, rent alone $30,000. Madam President, I want to further inform the Senate that the fees for the Soca Dome was waived by the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs in the interest of the Carnival.
Senator Mahabir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam President. Question number 71 to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, with regards to Part A of the question, routine repairs and maintenance work is done on an as-needed basis presently. Once funding becomes available, the relevant personnel, such as engineers, will be sourced to have a proper assessment of the facility to determine a way forward. This is required due to the age of the facility being approximately 35 years and 38 years respectively, with no major upgrade being done in recent times. Madam President, with regards to Part B of the question, the Water and Sewage Authority was contacted with regards to the leak on the eastern side of the Hazley Crawford Stadium. They indicated that the piping has dropped, thus causing the coupling to leak. Drawings are being sourced by the Sports Company of Trinidad and Tobago for the potable water system to create a scope of works for this contractor to be engaged to execute this job. Madam President, the drawings are a vital part of this task, since without these, there is no possible way for sport to know the exact details of what utility lines are located there and the configuration of those lines. Madam President, with regards to Part C of the question, the outdoor track is built to international standard. This has been inspected and used by the National Association of Athletic Administration, the NTAs, since its inception. Both tracks have been upgraded within the past year and are available to all athletes for use.
Senator Mark, next question.
Yeah. Question number 72 to the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, the NGC and CNC resumed negotiations in February 2018 with the aim of arriving at mutually acceptable commercial terms to allow the resumption of gas supply to the CNC plant. Both parties worked assiduously to resolve all outstanding issues. An agreement was finally reached on the key commercial terms to allow the signing of the long-term contract on April 1st, 2018. Effective April 2nd, 2018, the gas supply to CNC resumed. All's well that ends well.
Senator Mark.
Could the Honourable Minister indicate what is the duration of this new long-term contract agreement between the parties?
Minister.
I can't recall off the cuff, but I will get that information immediately to the Senate in the shortest order and most definitely before the next sitting of the House.
Senator Ma.
Madam President, can I ask the Honourable Minister, in a period of transparency and openness and accountability, whether the government is prepared to share with this House the final price of natural gas that was agreed upon between CNC and the National Gas Company of the Republic of TNT?
Minister.
Madam President, someone of Senators marked vast experience in this House and in the other place should know by now that these commercial contracts are subject to strict confidentiality clauses. They have never been made public by any administration is in office. And we do not plan to break that rule because these are commercial agreements that the economy of Trinidad depends on.
Senator Ma.
President, would the Honourable Minister be prepared to provide this Senate with any elements of the agreement that you consider to be relevant for public consumption, having regard to the fact that natural gas resources are constitute the property of the people of TNT, and there needs to be some accountability?
Minister.
Madam President, some of the routine clauses in the contract probably could be subject to public scrutiny. But even the quantities that are being made available is confidential because you have a situation where there's still a gas curtailment. There are other competitive companies in the Point Lisas estate. So if you disclose the volume and the price and the what they call the DCQ, the contracted quantities, it jeopardizes your whole business. So unfortunately, I am not in a position to comply.
Senator Ma.
Madam President, would the Minister not agree with me that there is need to, well, let me put a question, Madam President. Would the Minister indicate whether the National Gas Company, acting on behalf of the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, would have gotten a reasonably good deal in this long-term contract so that the country would have gained benefits from this arrangement in the long term? Could he share that with us?
Minister.
The answer to that is in the affirmative.
Next question, Senator Ma.
To the Honourable Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security.
Number 73, Madam.
Minister of National Security, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the Public Service Association led a shutdown of the immigration office located at 116 Frederick Street, Port of Spain, commonly referred to as the Moonan Building, on the 8th of April 2014. This closure led to the suspension of permanent resident citizenship and extension services provided at that office. Subsequently, permanent residence and citizenship interviews were conducted at the administrative office located at 135 Henry Street, Port of Spain, and extension services were provided at the office located at number 67 Frederick Street, Port of Spain, on a limited basis. The Immigration Division relocated to the Government Plaza over the period October to December 2016, where full permanent residence, citizenship, and extension services resumed. The Chief Immigration Officer assigned 10 Immigration Officers 3 to the permanent residence and citizenship section to interview applications or applicants in Port of Spain in treating the backlog that had been created between 2014 to 2015, 2016. Previously, there were 4 immigration officers assigned to this section, so in fact there was an increase in human resource. Interviews for permanent residence and citizenship began in January 2017 at the new location. Approximately 255 scheduled appointments for interviews are made per week at the immigration offices located at Port of Spain, San Fernando, and Tobago. Madam President, between 2014 to 2017 to 2018, there were roughly about 4,000 interviews conducted. In fact, we had set a timeline that between January 2017 to April 2018, we'd have cleared up the backlog, and we're well on our way to doing so, Madam President.
Senator Ma.
Through you, Madam President, indicate to us as we speak what would be the number of applications that would be have been approved, both for permanent residence and for citizenship, and how many. And Madam President, I would pause and come to the next question.
Minister.
Madam President, I know that there are roughly about 4,000 reviews, but I cannot dissect them and say how many were approved and unapproved, but that can certainly be provided, Madam President.
Senator Ma.
Honorable President, could the Honorable Minister indicate at this material time what would be the number of outstanding applications for permanent citizenship and residence at the Immigration Department as we speak? Can you share with us what is the backlog like at this material time?
Minister.
Madam President, as I mentioned a while ago, we are well clearing the backlog right now that we'll set a target between January 2017 to April 2018. We're well about clearing that backlog right now. So the figures that remaining, I certainly can provide that. I don't have them right now.
Madam President, could I ask the Honorable Minister, through you, if he can make that information available to this Honorable House within the next 5 days? Is that possible? You can give us a detailed breakdown of the backlog and how many have been processed and approved in the area of permanent residence and citizenship. Can you give us that undertaking?
Minister.
Madam President, that can be provided in the next sitting, Madam President. Certainly.
Thank you, Madam President.
Next question, Senator Hussain.
One.
President, don't go so fast. You have missed me.
Wasn't that different? Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. I think you have missed me. Yeah. Senator Hussain.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, question number 91 to the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam President, I thank the Senator for the timeliness of this question. Madam President, after an internal review of the priority areas for the application of the incentive in the first year, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries proposes to invite applications for this incentive program in May 2018. Accordingly, no grant or incentive can be approved before the application period is launched. I thank you.
Same.
Madam President, can the Minister indicate why such a delay in the implementation of this policy as it was announced in the last budget 27-2018?
Minister.
Madam President, having announced the policy, I've said several times in this place and elsewhere, it's very important that when you're implementing something that would receive the attention of a vast number of persons, but a small amount will benefit it, it's very important that you have the appropriate consultation, internal guidelines, audit processes, the criteria, an evaluation panel, an application process, a communication process, and so on. The budget having been approved at the end of October, the ministry has done its work, and as I've said, we're in a position to launch in May 2018. And having done the proper groundwork, I would be able in the future, Madam President, to stand in this House and explain to my colleagues on the other side why Mr. X or Mr. Y has not received an incentive and why Mrs. J has received an incentive. I thank you.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, in light of the answer given by the Minister that there would be a large amount of applicants and only a small amount will benefit, can the Minister please explain that?
Minister.
Madam President, it's simple mathematics. The figure stated by the Minister of Finance is $20 million. The maximum amount is $100,000. $20 million divided by 100,000 means that in the first instance, if we use the maximum, we have 200. And if we use less than the maximum, at some point, Madam President, we'll get to a finite number, which I can assure you will be far less than the number of applicants we would have received, applications we would have received.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, having regard for the length of time in establishing the committee in order to deal with the applications, can the Minister indicate how fast these applications will actually be processed from May 2018?
Minister.
Madam President, let me be very clear. The time has not been in establishing the committee. The time has been in establishing all the things I listed when I provided the answer. And Madam President, I think I'm also on record when I talk about efficiency and bureaucracy and so on, and I would not wish to risk giving a time frame for the approval, except to say that given the desire of the government to have this in place, and what I've said on record in support of it, I would, of course, do the best that I could do.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, could the Minister indicate who would be the members that would form this committee?
Minister.
Madam President, when the program is launched in May 2018, the evaluation committee will be known.
Next question, Senator Hussain.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, question number 93 to the Minister of Works and Transport or the Minister of Finance.
The question is addressed to the Minister of Works and Transport. Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, NIDCO and the Ministry of Tourism are scheduled to meet on Friday, 13th April 2018 to conduct a walkthrough of the vending booths at the Maracas Beach facility with a view to finalizing the handover of the booths to the Ministry of Tourism. Once they are completely satisfied, thereafter the Ministry of Tourism will coordinate the allocation process for the distribution of the vending booths. I thank you.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, can the Minister please explain the delay in delivering these booths to the vendors, having regard to the fact that an announcement was made that the booths would have been delivered for Carnival 2018?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, there have been several delays based on the weather pattern of the rainy season last year, which would have pushed the project back a couple of months. There were some problems with the landslip in the Maracas area, which would have delayed the project a bit. And I'm happy to say that the project will be completed in time for the vendors for the summer holidays. Thank you.
Senator Hussain.
Madam President, from the answer given by the Minister, is the Minister saying that the booths will be handed over during the July-August vacation period, having regard to the walkthrough of the facilities on Friday?
Minister of Works and Transport.
If the client, which is the Tourism Ministry, is satisfied Friday, the booths will be handed over by Friday.
Madam President, has the Minister already allocated these booths to specific vendors?
Madam President, the handing over of the booths are not in the purview of the Ministry of Works and Transport or NIDCO. That is a matter that is handled by the Ministry of Tourism.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sitting of the Senate are moved by a minister.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that the Senate agree to the appointment of Mr. Gerald Ramdeen in lieu of Mr. Saddam Hussein on the Joint Select Committee on National Security.
Honourable members, the question is that the Senate agree to the appointment of Mr. Gerald Ramdeen in lieu of Mr. Saddam Hussein on the Joint Select Committee on National Security. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Public business, government business, bill second reading.
Honourable Senators, the debate on the second reading of a bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Maintenance of Public Safety and Order through Discouraging Membership of Criminal Gangs and the Suppression of Criminal Gang Activity and for other related matters, which was in progress when the Senate adjourned on Tuesday, April the 4th, 2018, will be resumed. Attorney General, you have 14 minutes of speaking time remaining.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is good to be back in the Senate, and I thank you for the opportunity to wrap up the debate on this most critical piece of law. Madam President, I think it perhaps best to do justice in the 14 minutes permitted to me to address some specific concerns. May I put it in the context of the reality that we have circulated to all senators several documents, the first of which is a list of amendments which the government proposes be considered by honorable senators. We have also included specifically a marked up track change version of what the bill will look like in the context of those proposed amendments. I should indicate that these amendments are specifically driven by the government's consideration, firstly, of submissions given to us by the Law Association. It is, of course, now part of the public record that the government received the Law Association's commentary some 8 months after it requested it, but as the old saying goes, better late than never. That submission by the Law Association specifically addressed matters including the interpretation of the definition of gang, an allegation of circularity in the definition. They included the requested insertion of the mens rea or mental intention as it relates to offenses prescribed under the Act. They included certain tightening of standards of proof as it related to detention and search warranting provisions. They also included how information is recorded and proposed that there be a migration to the station diary. And that is, of course, with respect to the record of detention under the provisions of the Act. The amendments circulated also include recommendations driven by honorable senators, those on the opposition bench driven by Senator Ramdeen, those on the independent bench driven by all senators present, who I wish to commend roundly for having given such deep consideration. It's the first time in the 2.5 years that I've had the privilege of interacting with the Senate that I have seen the type of drill down, permit me for saying it quite boldly, by the independent bench. We received some very, very important fulminations, thinking outside of the box. And in fact, it's the first time that I've seen written submissions come from the independent bench, the first time. And I wish to compliment them very warmly for the level of research and detail that went into the submissions. May I indicate that the government has, whilst it has set out the amendments that we propose, some of them also overlap with some amendments that I've seen tabled this morning, in particular that by Senator Shriki Soon, who tabled certain amendments for consideration at the committee stage. So permit me very quickly then, Madam President, to indicate that we propose that the definition of law enforcement authority at Clause 4 of the bill be amended to specifically include the linkage to the Supplemental Police Act, Chapter 1502. We recognize that the concept of the estate police and of the rural police, as they're called under the Act, and also a third concept of limited liability entities, corporations which conduct work within the parameters of the Supplemental Police Act, that they ought to be included. It was driven by a recommendation coming from Senator Choate as to the tightening of language, where we deal with the criminalization of law enforcement authorities acting as gang members, or retaliatory action taken against law enforcement authorities. And so we have proposed an amendment to take care of that, broadening the scope of law enforcement authorities on the one hand, and then simplifying the definition as we see it appear in the retaliatory clause and in the gang clause where law enforcement is involved. Secondly, we have taken care of an amendment to Clause 6.1c. Clause 6.1c is in fact a clause which is driven to consider and let me read it in the context of the point. It is the offense of gang membership. And in treating with 61C, which is where a person professes to be a gang leader or a gang member in order to gain a benefit, Senator Choate had recommended that we fine-tune that reference to include for himself or another person, therefore driving home the particulars of the offense to be recorded, and therefore we welcome that submission from Senator Choate. We have next considered clause 6.4. Again, this is in reference to what I just referred to at clause 4. We've deleted the named agencies because we have improved the definition or proposed to improve the definition of law enforcement authority, and therefore we will be simplifying the language of this particular clause and making it consistent with the redefinition in clause 4 that we propose. In clause 6.5, Senator Choate asked for us to consider specifically an improvement to clause 6.5. The inclusion of an intent was born into the improved language that we have circulated. We propose the deletion of unlawful and maliciously, which is in clause 6.5. I must indicate that the language that we had originally proposed was born from the Offences Against the Persons Act, in particular section 12 of that act, and we stayed firstly in keeping with the Offences Against the Persons Act, and secondly with the fact that it was in the 2011 Anti-Gang Act, that is Act number 10 of 2011. Notwithstanding that, we have an opportunity now in the Senate to cause some better reflection, and we have taken the recommendations that we modify the mental intention, narrow it down to intent, and that we disaggregate the provision by having wounding or causing grievous bodily harm separate to doing grievous bodily harm to a member of the law enforcement agencies, and that is reflected in the draft that we have circulated. In clause 8.1, we propose that we add in the mental intention into this clause. Both the Law Association and several members of the Senate, and Senator Choate in particular, reflected upon the need to express the mens rea content, the mental intention element, and so we have inserted for consideration the word intentionally into clause 8.1. We have in clause 8.1 added in, and 8.1, just to remind honourable senators, is the retaliatory action clause. Senator Shriki had raised the concept that retaliatory action could be taken in circumstances where people had stopped providing financing and they were being threatened by the gang element. And so we have included for consideration in 8.1 a new subclause H, which takes care of the observation most commendably made by Senator Shriki, and it is also in his circulated draft that he has sent out this morning. We've next proposed that we reword clause 11.1. And in rewording 11.1 dealt with the possession of a bulletproof vest, firearm, ammunition, or prohibited weapon for the benefit of a gang. It's material to note that the bulletproof vest is because those elements were being actually used. It's not per se an accessory to a firearm, but a bulletproof vest obviously is intended to protect yourself in the course of criminal conduct, where criminals are using them. Firearm we've used within the meaning of Section 2 of the Firearms Act, but offensive weapon, as we know, prohibited weapon was not included by way of lifting from the Firearms Act, so we've included it there. In the disaggregation, Senator Choate had pointed out that it was useful to separate the possession from the usage, and therefore we have put usage as one aspect, using a bulletproof vest, firearm, ammunition, or prohibited weapon.
Attorney General, you have 5 minutes.
Oh my, that 14 minutes went that quickly. Madam President, we've disaggregated the possession into that position, and thank you for the reminder. We have sought to treat with the harmonization of offenses. We've treated with the levels of offenses. We've moved from 5 to 10 years. We've moved from 10 to 15 years, increasing penalties in clauses 12 and 13 to take care of the seriousness which Parliament ought to provide to those. We've inserted a defense for improvement of proportionality into clause 11.2. Similarly, clauses 14 1, 2, and 3, we have again sought to reflect the offences differently, moving from 15 to 20 years, 20 to 25, 20 to 25 in those respective clauses. We have inserted, thanks to Senator Ramkissoon, the offence of tipping off, borrowing from Section 51 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. The government had specifically intended to treat with this in standalone legislation because we didn't want the tipping off offence confined only to anti-gang or to poker Proceeds of Crime Act. We wanted it in standalone legislation for all protective services. But notwithstanding that specific intention, which we will pursue and see to completion, we've taken avail of the short-term argument of including tipping off, and I thank Senator Ramkissoon for raising it. We've gone broader than that suggested by Senator Ramkissoon to add the legal professional element into it so that attorneys at law don't find themselves running afoul of the law for having dealt with their client's business in a particular way. We have sought to have consistency in the standard in clauses 16 and 17 in treating with the standard for the issuance of a warrant or the standard for the consideration of further detention. We have sought to provide for the use of the station diary as opposed to a form, Senator Shriki-Soon, because the station diary is an immovable fixture, if you can call it that, from the particular usage by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service at the positions. We have sought to take care, lastly, Madam President, with the forfeiture order. Senator Prescott, and I wish to compliment him for his contribution, reminded of the due process that one ought to have in considering the right to property. Even though this is a 3/5 majority bill, it must still be within the confines of a democracy such as Trinidad and Tobago within the context of Section 13(2) of the Constitution. And in those circumstances, we provided for a prescriptive approach to provision of notice of forfeiture to persons who may be affected. But we've gone a step further than that recommended by Senator Prescott, and we've added in the fact that the court may, in its discretion, entertain anyone's application as an interested party into a property right, notwithstanding the fact that they had failed to take avail of the utilization and submission of forms to the Registrar of the Supreme Court in the manner which we suggest. I therefore say, Madam President, that this law is not only long overdue, this law is proportional in its circumstances, this law is proportional in its intended application, this law is a far different law from its operational approach that existed in 2011 under the UNC government. We had a very different approach of the denial of bail. We consider that the denial of bail was not one which should articulate this, and therefore I ask honourable senators for their support. I look forward to committee stage, and I'm seeing that anxious look as to time on your face, Madam President. I beg to move.
Honourable Senators, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Maintenance of Public Safety and Order through Discouraging Membership of Criminal Gangs and the Suppression of Criminal Gang Activity and for other related matters be now read a second time. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Make Provision for the Maintenance of Public Safety and Order through Discouraging Membership of Criminal Gangs and the Suppression of Criminal Gang Activity and for other related matters.
Attorney General.
I don't have the procedure before me, but from memory, Madam President, I beg to move that we move to the committee stage, but may I please just retrieve the correct procedure from the Deputy? Madam President, in accordance with Standing Order 66-1, I beg to move that the bill be committed to Committee of the Whole Senate, forthwith to be considered clause by clause.
Honourable Senators, the question is that the bill be committed to a Committee of the Whole Senate forthwith to be considered clause by clause. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. This Senate shall now go into Committee of the Whole to consider the bill clause by clause. So, Honourable Senators, before we begin, may I just point out that the original bill has, I think, 19 clauses, 2 schedules and a preamble. There are amendments circulated. I think there are 4 sets of amendments. There are the proposed list of amendments by the Attorney General, by Senator Ramkisoon, by Senator Shriki and by Senator Mark. So I'm going to ask all members to just sort out your documents, because I'm also hearing members asking for copies of different documents.
So, Madam Chair, I don't have those amendments.
And then, having said that, I think we will, this is an opportune time to suspend for 10 minutes. All right? So that the committee is suspended for 10 minutes.
This has been a presentation of the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM. You're viewing the Parliament Channel 11, also broadcasting on 105.5 FM.
The Parliament Chamber is open for guided tours. Come learn about the history of the Parliament, see where your Member of Parliament sits, or you can even hold a mock debate. Or tours, which are free of charge and even include educational videos, are a great vacation activity for youth groups or groups of any age. To book your tour, call our Corporate Communications and Productions Department at 624-7275, extension 2318 or 2520, Monday to Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Or you can email us at parlcorpcom@ttparliament.org. Want to see your parliamentarians in action but not close to a television? No problem. Log on to our YouTube channel, ParlView. Go to www.youtube.com/ParlView using your laptop, tablet, or smartphone. It's that easy to keep up with all the sittings of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and live Joint Select Committee meetings and even media briefings. Don't forget to click the subscribe button to receive a notification when we are streaming live events. So visit our YouTube channel, ParlView, to keep current with all our parliamentary happenings.
A leafy haven from the hustle and bustle of downtown Port of Spain, Woodford Square has for centuries been an important gathering place for the population. An open space of beauty, it has also been a site of political activism, religious fervor, and lively entertainment. Woodford Square is the green heart of the city. For centuries, Woodford Square has been a place of importance. It was significant to the Caribs, who called it the Place of Souls. Originally situated along the banks of the St. Anne's River, It was moved to its current location by Spanish Governor Chacon when he rerouted the river. In 1797, the park became known as Brunswick Square, after the House of Brunswick in Bavaria, close allies to the British royal family. For a time, the haven turned nightmarish, as the square became a place where many enslaved people were flogged or hanged. In 1803, 3 slave leaders were hung in the square. Their brutal execution used to set an example to other dissidents. When in 1808, Port of Spain was engulfed by a terrible fire that destroyed 3,000 buildings, Brunswick Square provided a temporary home to 2,000 enslaved people, as well as white and colored citizens. Sir Ralph Woodford became governor to Trinidad and Tobago in 1813 and immediately started to lay out the city of Port of Spain in a more planned and orderly fashion following the 1808 fire.
He was an energetic man, an energetic governor. He was dedicated to what he saw as the development of the island commercially, economically, politically, socially. He was a builder and a reformer, and he tried to carry out his mission of making Trinidad more British, but he was also deeply hostile to the aspirations of the free colored class, and by no means a friend of the slaves.
Governor Woodford's German botanists planted rare tropical trees from Trinidad and South America, and the park was squared off into a design that was based on the British flag. The center of the park was meant to be the original site of the Trinity Cathedral, but public outcry led to its being moved to its current location just south of the square. The bandstand was built in 1917 and opened by the then mayor, Dr. E. Prada. In 1866, Scotsman Gregor Turnbull donated a beautiful Triton Fountain for the center of the square. Made of cast iron, it features mermaids and mermen. Crafted in the Baroque style, the original artwork is believed to have been done by the Austrian sculptor Victor Tilgner. Iron railings were erected around the square in 1892. By the end of the 1800s, Brunswick Square was at the heart of Port of Spain, bordered by the Red House, the Holy Trinity Cathedral, and the National Library.
The idea that was in focus at the point in time was that there should be a central open space in the capital, and around that central open space should be public buildings.
During World War I, Brunswick Square became Woodford Square.
Brunswick is a German principality. During World War I, everything German was taboo, so it was renamed for the governor who had laid it out.
In the 1950s, Eric Williams used the square for public lectures in which he challenged the British imperial system in Trinidad, and the term University of Woodford Square was coined. Williams made his famous "Let Down My Bucket" speech in the square, in which he declared his intention to enter political life.
Woodford Square, most importantly, is where the political identity of Trinbagonians was born. Everyone has heard about the University of Woodford Square, and many people still remember very, very fondly the stirring speeches that the then Chief Minister, Dr. Eric Williams, gave.
The bandstand has since become a central point for political rallies. In the 1970s, Woodford Square was the focal point of marches and demonstrations protesting inequality, unemployment, and other social issues of the time. Meetings of the National Joint Action Committee, NJAC, were also held in Woodford Square, their rallying cry of "Power to the people" ringing out across the area. NJAC dubbed the square the People's Parliament, and it became an integral meeting point during the Black Power demonstrations. Today, a lively political forum still takes place in the southeast corner of the square. The Speaker's Corner allows anyone to present their views on current issues. Points for topical discussion are listed on a blackboard, and current issues are debated fiercely. From the 18th century to today, Woodford Square has been a vibrant part of Port of Spain's landscape. A central meeting place for the population, it is still a place for rousing political rallies, religious events, craft fairs, and of course, liming. Enclosed within these wrought iron railings is the heart of Port of Spain.
Good chair.
Clause 1.
The question is, Honourable Senators, that Clause 1 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 1 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 1 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 2.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part of the bill. Honourable Senators, the question is that Clause 2 now stands part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 2 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 3.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part of the bill. The question is that Clause 3 now stand part of the bill. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 3 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 4.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part of the bill.
Madam Chair, I don't have an amendment here, but I just wanted with your indulgence to... Oh, you have an amendment, AJ?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
So, Honourable Senators, an amendment to Clause 4 has been circulated by the Attorney General. Attorney General.
Madam Chairman, taking into account the submissions by my learned senior Senator Choate, we propose to insert into the definition of law enforcement authority, appearing at page 3 of the bill, the following: a protective service agency as defined under the Supplemental Police Act. That will take account of 3 categories of police, if I could use that term. Firstly, estate police. Secondly, the reserve police. And thirdly, the organizations that operate under that act as limited liability companies providing services under the legislation. That is bodies corporate that engage in law enforcement activity. That will definitely allow for us to capture the broader subset.
Any comments?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask the Honorable Attorney General, where are we going to capture the role of the social services agencies? Because, as you have said, you're not just on a punitive cost. You want to have a holistic approach to this matter. So when we come into agencies, what is the role, or where would you suggest we really insert the social services agencies? Because there must be a rehabilitative and integrative element and component to the legislation. So I just wanted to know if, for instance, you would want to consider that aspect, and if you would, where you would want to suggest that that be inserted.
Before I call on the Attorney General, Senator Ramdeen, you had a comment?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for recognizing me. To the Honorable Attorney General, through you, Madam Chair. Attorney General, is it the, I've looked at the, I have in front of me actually, the definition of protective service agency under the Supplemental Police Act means a body corporate registered under the Companies Act whose principal object is the protection of persons and property by providing guards and escorts and approved for that purpose by the Minister. Now, save and accept the approval by the Minister. Am I correct? Because I know in some of the debates that we had previously, you had said one of the aims of the government is to regulate this particular industry. In raising my concern, can I simply ask through you, Madam Chair, is it not that this industry is unregulated as present? And then I'll continue. Can I?
Attorney General.
Yes, with no disrespect to Senator Mark, in immediate answer through you to Senator Ramdeen on a very, very important point he's raised. It is pseudo-regulated. Those entities that have been performing functions for state enterprises, statutory authorities, go through this particular supplemental police legislation and have the approval so that they can gain contracts. However, there is a whole other section, a very large section that is entirely unregulated, the private protection services that many companies engage in. And we have had public consultations, and we have a draft law for the regulation of that industry now, which we intend to circulate very shortly. So Senator Ramdeen has touched upon something which is very true. There's a pseudo-regulation. I'd say it's more 30% regulated and 70% unregulated. But for the purposes of the mischief which we hope to attach here, one, criminalizing law enforcement as we've defined it, who are engaged in gang activity, and two, criminalizing people on a heavier standard who interfere with law enforcement in gang suppression. For those two purposes, we've gone with the known law at present.
That leads me to the concern, Attorney General. While one can readily understand the mischief that you seek to cure and the solution that one seeks to propose, I just think that the fact that the only component that one has to satisfy is that you have a registered company and you have approval by the Minister, it allows a very large, unregulated number of persons to have very important powers that are given to them under the legislation. And I was wondering whether it would not be, because of the unregulated nature and because of the extent of the powers that we propose to give by the proposal that is made to put this particular group of persons into the definition of protective services agency, whether it would not be a better process to do this when the industry is actually regulated, because there are, like, as you would know from your consultation, the definition that you have, which is A, B, C, D, and E, are all public offices. They are all regulated. It includes the police service that has special powers under the Police Service Act and inherently special powers as constable. But to have this group of persons who is totally unregulated, and then you have companies that are set up who take any and anyone, for want of a better word, and make them officers, is quite a big jump, and I would want to say a dangerous precedent or a dangerous path to go down. To know that we are giving these powers to virtually, apart from your A, B, C, D, and E, to persons virtually unknown.
Okay, before you answer, Senator Ramdeen, is there any other comment on the proposed amendment circulated on behalf of the Attorney General?
Yes, I would want to, before the AG responds.
Well, Senator Mark, let me just
Okay,
ask, because you had raised a concern already. I'm trying to do this systematically. So let me just ask, is there anyone
Senator
else who
Choate
wishes to express? Senator Choate.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with Senator Ramdeen. I think the risk of having persons invested with this kind of draconian power is too great, and this amendment should be removed.
Madam Chair.
Just 1 second.
I don't want to lose the pulse of it.
No, I won't allow you to. It's
Yeah.
fine. Senator Obika.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I must express my total disdain for this insertion, because if it was intended for such a significant clause to be added, it should have formed part of the debate to be ventilated, so the
All right,
public's
Senator,
opinion could.
Okay, Senator
Yeah.
Obika, we're in committee stage, and there's no need for the descriptions that you're using. Senator Choate has said she does not agree with the amendment. Perhaps you can also, present your comments in that kind of context.
Well,
okay?
I'm giving the why.
Yes, Senator Mark?
Yeah, Madam Chair, in accordance with your statement, I just want to support Senator Ramdeen's submission and Senator Choate's submission.
Thank you. Attorney General.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps honourable senators could reflect upon my reply as follows. The definition, as is set out here, for law enforcement authority must be viewed in the context of where it is used. It is only used in 2 places. The 2 places are specifically where we treat with the retaliatory action in Section 8, in Clause 8, and in Clause 6.4. 6.4 says, where a member of a law enforcement authority or a person involved in intelligence gathering commits an offense under this Act, he is liable to conviction or indictment for 25 years. Secondly, subclause 5 of that, a gang leader or gang member who, with intent, wounds, causes grievous bodily harm to a member of a law enforcement authority or person involved in intelligence commits an offense. When we go to 8(1)(c), a person shall not intentionally take retaliatory action against C, giving information to law enforcement authority. There is no power given to anybody in the law enforcement authority position. There's no power. It can therefore not be draconian. What we're saying is, if you are a member of a law enforcement agency, because you have been precepted, let me put it that way, using a very inappropriate, because it's not quite precise formula, because you have been given this authority to be a law enforcement person, you're calling yourself a police under the Supplemental Police Act, you're acting on an estate, you're in a Petrotrin estate, you're in a rural development company estate, you're a company working there. Because you have the powers of police given to you by the police commissioner and by the minister if it's an organization, if you involve yourself in gang activity, you're to be criminalized. Secondly, if you find yourself the victim of gang activity because of what you were doing, you were in a squatter community for the Petrotrin estate, which is treating with gang activity there, the man is properly there as a member of the supplemental police, and somebody takes retaliatory action against him, well, he too ought to be protected. But nowhere in this law is there a power given to these people. Now, to address Senator Ramdeen's point, we wrestled with the concept of do it now or later. And as I said in the debate, Senator Obika, because I raised it in the debate on many occasions, in the debate, wrestling with this concept of do we do it when we treat with the whole standalone piece of law? Do we treat with it where we come up in a different perspective? Because it isn't only the informal, unregulated agencies that we're treating. We're treating with criminalizing certain conduct in law enforcement and other divisions, customs, immigration, etc. We looked at it from a short-term perspective and we said it's reasonable to consider that these people may very well be involved in applying suppression activity. But I must correct senators. There is no power given to these people other than the power which comes from the parent law under which they act, which is the Supplemental Police Act, which is a power specifically given. So we thought, and we do have a firm view, that leaving them out may be a lacuna.
And Attorney General, can you respond to Senator Mark's first comment?
That's why I said I didn't want to lose the
Yeah.
pulse, Madam Speaker. I can't even remember it.
No, I can.
Could you help me?
It was about the agencies and whether the provision should be made for social service agencies. in the
I
bill.
see. Thank you for assisting me, Madam Chairman, so ably. This bill does not propose to treat with the outside elements of recidivism or other support, etc. This bill is intended to treat with the criminalization aspect. We've only treated with law enforcement from two perspectives. If you are a member of law enforcement and in gang activity, or if there is action taken against you by gang members whilst you're engaged in the course of doing what you ought to do. The softer coordination, which is very important, and I agree with Senator Mark, is intended to be captured in operational procedures and in other pieces of law.
Senator Ramdeen.
Attorney General, while I understand the explanation given with respect to there being not given a direct power, for example, like a power of arrest or a power to go into someone's home, while I accept that subclause 4 of subsection 6 and subclause 5 of subsection 6 simply creates the offenses to which a law enforcement authority would apply, when one looks at the retaliatory action under under section 8, and then you go to C, the concern that I have is that the way in which the clause is crafted, it still allows an offense to be committed by someone who is in the process of providing intelligence to a law enforcement person. So while it doesn't expressly give you a power, it casts, for want of a better word, it casts the net wider than it would normally be in relation to someone who is providing information to a law enforcement person. The concern that I raised, while I understand the response of the government and I understand the mischief that the government is trying to achieve, the problem is that with these people so unregulated that there is virtually no way of knowing who are the persons. Let me cast it another way. Anyone is entitled to know what they must do and regulate their behavior, not to be caught by the criminal law. And therefore, when one looks at the subclause in C...
I'm sorry, Senator Ramdeen, and Madam Chair, I apologize for interrupting. Would it meet purpose if in the definition of law enforcement agency and in the incorporation of supplemental police that we were to extricate the concept of the organization which is supplemental police? In other words then, confine oneself only then to the estate police and the rural police?
Of course, yeah.
Because that way we'd be capturing the regulated side and avoiding the, I don't know who you are under a corporate label.
Only because, not because there's any ill intent towards it, only because
I understand and welcome your concern.
People in these areas just set up a company, call it a security company, employ people, and then that's it.
Under umbrella licensing.
So I have absolutely no difficulty in applying the regulated part of the Supplemental Police Act to the provisions of the Act, because you have something to grab onto, something to hold accountable. so that I would be prepared to support that position.
Madam Chair, may I therefore ask for room for our team just to formulate what the exception to the supplement, subject, of course, I mean, far be it for us to truncate any other senator's point of view. But are there any other views on what I've just suggested, Madam Chair?
Members? So with your leave, honourable senators, we will defer consideration of clause 4.
Oh, you defer clause 4.
Okay.
But before you defer,
Honourable senators, yes. Okay, I'm going to give a little leeway just this time. We just discussed clause 4, and the Attorney General has agreed to some sort of amendment which he needs to now put together. Is there any other issue with clause 4? I'm inviting it now before I defer the consideration. Senator Mark.
Madam Chair, I don't know if I can catch the attention of the Attorney General because
Well,
I know.
you can catch mine.
Okay,
and I will,
yes,
yeah.
okay. Madam Chair, if we go to clause, I think it's new clause 16, Madam Chair, on page 9 of the AG's the draft. No, I'm trying to drive at something so that you'll understand. If we go to, I am saying 16, I'm seeing 16, I'm seeing 15. So I assume it's new clause 16.
Okay.
Okay? If you go to sub 2, right, you will see where the magistrate has issued a warrant for police to enter a dwelling house. But when you go to subsection 3, no warrant is issued. Now, we include now a dwelling house, including a building, ship, vessel, carriage, box, or receptacle. But nowhere in the interpretation section do we have an understanding or a definition of what is a dwelling house, what is a place, what is a premise, what is a ship. In other words, we are talking about identifying gang members, and if they are on a ship, if they are on a vessel, we need to identify in the interpretation section these definitions, because the law has to be clear, and you can't leave it discretionary.
Senator Mahabir, you
Yes.
had a concern?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the issue of circularity arose time and time again in the debate. And the definition of a gang, you see, means a combination of two or more persons, whether formally or informally organized, who engage in gang-related activity. So it appears twice. I put forward for the consideration of the Honorable Attorney General whether it would, to avoid the circularity argument, whether we say gang means a combination of two or more persons, whether formally or informally organized, who engage in crime-related activity or criminal activity, and then we change gang-related activity to mean crime-related activity or criminal activity. In that way, we eliminate the second gang, and we avoid the circularity argument with that has arisen time and time again.
Madam Chair, isn't a rose by any other name yet as sweet as a rose is? What, respectfully, is the difference between criminal activity and gang activity? We've looked at all of the definitions of of what is a gang member, etc. Every jurisdiction around the world has an element of circularity attached to it. The construction and interpretation of a gang member, a gang leader, is correctly anchored in the concept of gang activity. Gang activity is scheduled in our particular law. In Jamaica, they've gone a slightly more expansive route, where their schedule actually lists every single law and the parts of the law which they consider to be, including things like agricultural legislation. Our law is within the confines of how street gang and non-street gang legislation is comprised. So there is an element of circularity, but it isn't as circular as it appears to be on the first blush.
Okay, fine.
And with respect to Senator Mark's, what Senator Mark is saying is that there is a later clause in the bill which speaks to dwelling house, ship, vessel, carriage, box, or receptacle, and that the definitions of dwelling house, ship, vessel, carriage, box, or receptacle should fall within this Clause 4 definitions?
Madam Chair, unless I'm wrong, that's a standard formula, for instance, in the Firearms Act, where they are not defined either. So it can be dealt with under the ordinary meaning, literal interpretation rule. We've had the firearms legislation, which is robust legislation, which has been well traversed by the courts, and there is no definition for the very concepts that they use there. But fortunately for us, the common law recognizes the concepts, and the rules of interpretation under the literal interpretation route could perhaps meet the concerns expressed by my learned colleague, Senator Mark.
Madam Chair, we are dealing with a piece of legislation that requires a 3/5 majority because we know it infringes sections 4 and 5. All I'm saying, AG, you do not want to be imprecise and too narrow, or too broad, I should say, Madam Chair, and vague on matters like these. Because remember, the police will be administering this law. And if we do not give the police a clear appreciation of these definitions, then it is somewhat left discretionary, Madam Chair, to the police. And when the AG said that we talk about the Firearm Act and it is not defined here, this is a special piece of legislation with a sunset clause. So we want this thing to work. We want it to work.
Okay, Senator Mark, I think the Attorney General has gotten the gist of your comment. Attorney General, you want to respond?
Yes, please. Perhaps I can allay my learned colleagues' well-expressed fears, and I do understand the intention that he's driving at. Let's take a very, very old piece of law, the Indictable Offences Preliminary Inquiry Legislation, Chapter 1201. Under the provisions for search warrant at Section 5, any magistrate who is satisfied by proof on oath that there is reasonable ground for believing that there is in any building, ship, vessel, carriage, box, or receptacle or place, etc. And there's no definition either. The danger in being too prescriptive in definition is that you may find yourselves giving fuel to the defense that, well, I am without the definition, I'm outside of the definition. And whilst I understand my learned colleague's desire, and I compliment him for his concern, most respectfully, I think that the law is well settled on this area and that we could rely upon our common law and the literal interpretation.
Senator Ramdeen.
In this clause 4, you have a definition of school that includes an orphanage, recreation ground or park, or an establishment for the conduct of technical or vocational training or educational, sporting or social programs designed for children. And that bites on section 14.3, I think. As you are very well aware, we passed legislation that you have operationalized in relation to rehabilitation centers, which I think, because of the fact that we have a defined, a specific piece of legislation that captures that type of institution, I would have thought that the way in which section 14 is crafted, having regard to the definition of school that you have in the interpretation section, that it may be very useful for us to lift what is there in the, I think, Child Rehabilitation Centers Act, and lift it into that definition, because what you've done is, because you've licensed all of the rehabilitation centers pursuant to section 5 of that act, it now creates a special institution that would be really specific, even perhaps more specific, and would capture the mischief that you are seeking to derive out of this definition, which is you want to have institutions where children can be recruited. Yeah. Now, those institutions, for two reasons. One, they are child institutions, but secondly, they are rehabilitation centers. So those children who are there are perhaps the most vulnerable to being subject to be integrated into a gang, and therefore I would have thought that it would be very useful for us to.
Madam Chair, I thank Senator Ramdeen profusely for the observation that he has made. He's very correct. It's something that we flagged and looked at. The thought was that we would have taken it from the other end of the equation, but I accept and welcome Senator Ramdeen's position. The definition that we ought to try and capture within the meaning of school, we'll take on board the suggestion that we look to the both pieces of legislation, the Children and Foster Care and Nurseries legislation, which creates the concept of a child rehabilitation center or rehabilitation centers, which are both children's homes and CRC's child rehabilitation centers, meaning the punitive and non-punitive, the under tenors and over tenors perspectives. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I'll invite our team to consider a modification to the definition of school to include those specifically.
Senator Hussain.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam Chair, sorry, through you to the Attorney General, I saw at clause 11 that the term bulletproof vest was used. I know when we look at the former Act, the 2010 anti-gang legislation was defined, and I saw it was removed in this version.
Yes.
Are we going to include the definition of bulletproof vest?
Madam Chair, we had actually removed the definition of bulletproof vest specifically. Yes, it was there previously because we fell to the literal interpretation and there was no real need to define it prescriptively.
So, honourable senators, unless anyone wishes to raise an issue with Clause 4, I am now going to defer consideration of Clause 4.
Clause 5.
Honourable senators, the question is that Clause 5 stand part of the bill.
Madam Chair, does the AG have,
There's
the
no,
AG,
there's no
yeah,
amendment.
but just a clarification.
Sure.
AG, when Senator Prescott was here, he did raise this matter. That is Section 5A. The evidence for a gang person, a person who you could define as a gang member. And A says whether the person has admitted that he's a gang leader or a gang member. And I think what Prescott, the Elton Prescott, former acting senator was asking, admit to whom? You know, in other words, this is very vague and very loose. And sometimes, as you know, if I can give you a concrete example, you may have youths in depressed communities and they want to have a rank and they may tell somebody, you know, I belong to a gang. I belong to a gang. But it doesn't mean to say that he is in fact a member of that gang. But suppose by way of circumstantial evidence, the police punks upon that group and the one member admits that this young man is a member of this gang because he told me so. So I'm just asking, I'm just hypothetically raising, are we endangering possibly innocent people who can be taken down by the police and be detained for 17 days and later charged? So how do we ensure that the scales of justice, are balanced in a proper way? I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I thank my learned colleague for raising the point. Senator Prescott had indeed taken a similar approach in terms of explanation. First of all, we come back to the mischief which this bill seeks to address, and that mischief is squarely gang membership, gang activity. And yes, there are quote-unquote pretenders who walk the street and may unwittingly find themselves within the category of persons. But we, first of all, in relation to the admission to whom question within the context of 5A, we looked at a number of jurisdictions, in particular out of the United States of America, where the street gang legislation, as they call it, was done. And all of them, down to a number, have a similar formula. There's no admission to whom. In fact, Senator Prescott had suggested that there was an admission to a police officer, if I recall. However, we felt that that would be prescribing us too narrowly because the circumstantial evidence is circumstantial. Now, there is, of course, in law, the concept of weight of evidence. First of all, you have admissibility issues, if it's hearsay, double hearsay, etc. And then you have the weight of evidence issues. How much weight ought a jury to consider or a judge ought to consider in these circumstances? So it isn't any and every pretender that may find himself bagged, particularly when one looks to the proposed amendments by Senator Choate, which I hope we've caught correctly, in what we propose to Clause 6, where we say you profess to be a gang leader or gang member in order to gain a benefit for himself or another person. So we do catch the quote-unquote pretender who's seeking to gain a benefit. One can easily recall what we saw in Trinidad and Tobago post-1990s attempted coup. There was a large enforcement posse and debt collector posse who all of a sudden wore Muslimin garb and had lahia, who had beards, as if you'd gone to do Hajj, right? You know that beard that you wear, lahia beard. And that formed a category of persons to be frowned upon. But this particular clause 5 really is an indicator of the type of evidence which a court can consider. It isn't conclusive or categorical in any point. And we felt that it is important, particularly when we're going to be relying upon human intelligence and plants in gang activity, operatives who are there, undercover persons, as reflected upon by Mr. Justice Barrow, Justice of Appeal, in the Kevin Stewart case, where he said it's no slam dunk. Because of that, we felt that we didn't need to prescribe the admission to whom formula in this particular section.
Chair, if I may, just my final submission, is a caveat. If you go to the United States Supreme Court and you go to all these states, a lot of these anti-gang laws have been declared and struck down as unconstitutional, many of its provisions. And one of the challenges that they have had in the states, the prosecution, is being able to properly prove these things, And I'm just saying that we should not be getting into a minefield where they have made several errors with their legislation. And we are now borrowing aspects of the very legislation that they have committed a lot of errors in prosecuting and pursuing. And many innocent people have had to be released because they have not been able to prove these things, because everything was on suspicion and conjecture. So all I'm saying, AJ, I want the law to work. And one of the things I'm trying to protect, or we are trying to protect, I should say, is state being liable. Because, when you lose a case, they go to the court and they sue the Attorney General and the state, and we have to pay money. So all I'm saying is that whatever we are doing, we want it to be tight so that when you take down somebody, you know you're going to prosecute that person. So, Madam Chair, that is my concern, and I just want to advise the AG, it is not as easy as we are seeing.
Madam Chair, if I could just quickly respond to that. First of all, we've not only repeated what was there for a full 5 years under the last government, but we've also borrowed not only from the United States of America, but many other jurisdictions, including Jamaica. The acknowledgement that one has to pay money is well known to me because I, as the current Attorney General, am paying damages on a continuous basis for matters under the last operation of anti-gang laws. I'm well familiar. And we do join issue with Senator Mark that we all want the law to work, but we feel that this is necessary as cast.
Senator Mahabir.
Madam Chair, I too had concerns similar to Senator Prescott and Senator Mark on 5A. I've heard the Honorable Attorney General indicating that in the court of law, it is the procedure would be that they will assign different weights to different individuals. But I'm just wondering whether, given the fact that the state has not been particularly successful in enforcing this piece of legislation in the past, we will not, for the AG to consider that the person has to admit to a law enforcement officer as opposed to anybody, and the law enforcement officer can be an undercover agent, which will then put the onus on the police to start to infiltrate the gangs and place the necessary pressures on them, so that we are giving powers to the police to improve its undercover operations, as opposed, and where the admissibility in court, I think, may be a little bit better.
So what is your suggestion?
My suggestion is to a law enforcement officer, whether he's in uniform or not, and I'll be more comfortable with that with respect to the enforceability. So whether a person has admitted to any law enforcement officer.
Madam Chair, we don't propose that because what happens with the circumstance of a whistleblower who is complicit? John Brown was a member of a gang. He says, I no longer want to be a gang person. He says, Mr. X admitted to me on umpteen occasions. I recorded it. I was there. I have first-hand testimony. The DPP says, I'll give you immunity. He's not a police officer, in clothing or without. and therefore we'd be cutting ourselves out of a very valuable pool of evidence which can cause a conviction.
Okay, so honorable senators, the question is that clause 5 now stand part of the bill. All in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 5 now stands part of the bill.
Clause 6.
Honorable senators, the question is that clause 6 stand part of the bill. Honorable senators, there are 2 proposed amendments to clause 6. There is one amendment circulated by Senator Shriki Soon, and the Attorney General has also circulated certain amendments. I propose that we deal with the amendment circulated on behalf of Senator Shriki Soon. Senator Shriki Soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Honorable Attorney General. Honorable AG, I, in my presentation, referred to the consideration for a person who has performed a condition for membership to be considered as a person who can be classified as a member of a gang because he wouldn't be formalized into it. Or, however, would you consider that as?
Okay.
Yes.
Most definitely, and I thank Senator Shriki Soon for the very positive recommendation and improvement. However, we propose that instead of it being a new D, in keeping with the architectural flow, that we insert the recommendation as C and then renumber C as D, and that instead the wording read, performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang. And that way we'd capture it. I welcome this submission. I don't know if it's agreeable to the Honourable Senator if we reformulate it in the fashion that I've suggested.
Most certainly, AG.
And can I have the reformulation?
Yes, Madam Chair. So in Senator Shriki Soon's circulated amendment to clause 6, we would propose insert a new, and thank you, Senator. Yes, Senator's correct. Senator Batiste Primus, thank you for the sharp eyes. We would propose insert in subclause 1.
6.1.
Insert in 6.1, not 6. So it should be clause 6.1. Insert new subclause C. And it would read, instead of D, it would read, performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang. The consequential renumbering would then flow automatically. And, Madam Chair?
Just one sec. Performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang.
And there would be a further need. We'd have to delete in 6.1b the semicolon or. Sorry, just the or. And then we would have to add in the new subclause C that we just read out, performs, etc. After the semicolon, we'd have to put the word or. So in 6.1, delete the word or in 6.1b, and then insert new subclause C, which would read, performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang, semicolon, or, and then the rest will follow. The sequential renumbering will follow.
Just 1 second. Let me clarify first, and then we'll get it so that it will be this, and then this will be a D.
Correct. So you look at the or,
Yeah.
this then becomes
D. New D.
6.1. So the Shriki Soons will become 6.1 new clause C.
Correct. And what happens to this? Is it that we substitute in this?
Well, this then comes to, yes. So this
Comes where?
D.
This becomes D.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So the or will come after Senator Shriki Soons.
Yes. Senator Mahabir, you wanted to say something before? No, Senator Mark. Yeah?
Yeah, Madam Chair, again, you know, I spoke about the doctrine of vagueness and broadness. And Madam Chair, if we do not define or narrow the legislation, when we say an act as a condition for membership into a gang, what do we mean by that? Can we not, for instance, give narrow it down to some kind of precision, because this thing is going to be abused, you know, and innocent people are going to go down the chute with this. And I am not here to be party to any legislation that could allow innocent people to be captured. Law has to be precise. It can't be vague. And this is vagueness to the heights, Madam Chair. So if the AG, who is the person who is going to deal with this legislation at the end of the day, could explain to Trinidad and Tobago at the committee stage, when we say performs an act as a condition for membership, what do we mean, Madam Chair? What does the AG mean by that? Could we give some examples so that people who are involved in gang activity and we who are looking on will know what we are talking about? This is too broad. I am worried.
Before I call on the Attorney General, are there any other comments on the amendment to Clause 6 as proposed by Senator Shriki Soon and further amended? Attorney General.
Chair, and I thank Senator Ramdeen for flagging it for me. In 6.3, we'd have to amend the references to 1B or C. It'll be 1B, C, or D. May I, whenever you indicate, respond to Senator Mark?
No, not just yet. Senator Mahabir, you wanted to say something? Specifically in respect
Yes.
of... Yes.
Madam Chair, I think we are simply missing two S's in a person who professes to be a gang leader or a gang member in order to gain a benefit for himself or another person, intimidates other person or promotes a gang, commits an offense. You see, it's one person. A person who professes to be a gang leader cannot intimidate. He intimidates and or promotes a gang. So we could get the
Yeah. Okay. Attorney General.
I thank Senator Mahabir for bringing the specter of Senator Prescott back to life, the ubiquitous spelling police and subject and verb agreements. I thank the Honourable Senator. Pardon? So, Madam Chair, in response to Senator Mark, I do appreciate that in the last incarnation that he sat, he wasn't permitted to enter into debates, and therefore his passion is now unfolding in the fashion that we see now. But I'd remind Senator Mark that this was a feature of the very law that he presided over as Speaker and as Chairman, when he could have policed the legislation. But in any event, my learned colleague, now unshackled as he is before us, waxing as he does before us. Yes.
Please. I don't want to hear about shackles or unshackles. I just want to get through these clauses, please.
So Madam Chair, what does it mean?
General,
it means, yes, what does it mean? It means the literal interpretation of what it means. An act includes an omission. An act is an act as a condition for membership. It is a plain and literal interpretation of what it says.
So, I am now going to put, Honourable Senators, the amendment proposed by Senator Shriki Soon and further amended, and the other consequential amendments. I am going to now put that to the vote, and I hope that I have it right. But I'm sure that Senator Mark and Mahabir will correct me if I go astray. So, Honourable Senators,
So
no, we're taking off from B, 6.1B. we're taking off the words or, and then we're going to add new subclause C.
Madam Chair, my technocratic team is trying to convince me that the language as set out and as observed by Senator Mahabir is correct, in that it is meant to be read in a particular fashion. Sometimes the technocratic language may be different from that, so I'm yet to be convinced by my team.
So lawyers not allowed to
Honorable AG, I don't think lawyers should violate and mutilate the English language.
Any person who professes to be or govern or intimidate them.
Madam Chair, in answer to something raised by my learned colleague, Senator Mahabir, which I responded to, the technocratic team is telling me that we ought to perhaps treat it in a slightly different way. But I would not want to indulge you too much with that, because we're still considering Senator Shriki Soon's amendment, which was just for an insertion. It's now causing certain consequential amendments. But there is a formula that I would propose. So perhaps, Madam Chair, it may be useful if we were to summarize what the proposed amendment should look like so that we are literally all on the same page first. Is that convenient to you?
That's fine. We are dealing with Honorable Senators Clause 6.1, which is Senator Shriki Soon's amendment. So, Honorable Senators, the question is that Clause 6.1 be amended as follows. At 6.1b, delete the word or, insert a new 6.1c, which reads as follows: performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang, colon, or.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And then the renumbering of the C will be D.
Right, and now, to take care of the technocratic position, in subclause C, we propose that it read as follows: professes to be a gang leader or gang member in order to dash, and now we dropped another line, Roman 1, gain a benefit for himself or another person.
No, hold on. We're dealing with, you're going into your amendments that you have proposed.
Much of what I've suggested is not in Senator Shriki Soon's, but we've enveloped it in his. So it would be convenient if we were to just treat with it in the proposed amendments that we're modifying now for him, as we've already done.
All right, then I would suggest, Attorney General, let us just go through. I will not, at this stage, take the vote. Let us just go through what are the amendments, and then I will put it to the vote.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah. So we have gotten Senator Shriki Soon's, which I just read out, and now we're going to do some subsequent modification. Yeah?
Well, you see, we have done it already. I'm just about to insert something in between that which we've done already, which you've recorded.
Well, I've recorded it, but we haven't voted, so I'm going to go it over. Let's just get exactly what you're saying, because I didn't have those consequential amendments.
I'm aware. I'm now inserting it in, so I'm asking you to stick a pin on the point where you were and record the following in the round, which we'll then repeat.
Yes.
Is that convenient?
That's what I'm proposing as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So may I?
Mm-hmm.
So in C, the words, if we look to what is written there, it will be professes to be a gang member or gang leader. All right, in the new D, I'm going with what it appears now. So the new D, it'll be professes to be a gang leader or gang member in order to dash. We would now go Roman 1. gain a benefit for himself or another person, colon. Sorry, semicolon. Then, before the word intimidate, insert a Roman 2. And it'll go Roman 2, intimidate other persons, semicolon. Or, and then Roman 3 would be inserted, promote a gang. And then the choiseul continues exactly as it is, commits an offense. There's further, Madam Chair. If we go over into subclause 3, a person who commits an offense under subsections 1B or C, we will say instead 1B, C, or D.
Yes, we had
And then that continues. And then that would be in the round, all of the submissions on sections, on clause 6. And forgive me for completeness, at 5, so the 5 in section 6,
Yes, but you see.
we're inserting after the A, which says A, wounds or causes grievous bodily harm to, we're inserting the word or after the semicolon.
It's there.
Okay, sorry, in the draft I have, it wasn't there. I'm not seeing it on my circulated amendments either.
It's in the original bill. It's in the original bill.
As amended version from the House.
Okay, well then that is being taken care of under my amendment, so I'll stop there.
Just a sec. Does that deal with the Attorney General? So, Attorney General, may I ask you?
Yes, ma'am.
You, in your proposed amendments to clause 6.
Yes, ma'am.
You had A, B, C. Is it that you're not pursuing these anymore and we have just incorporated all your amendments into what we initially started at
No,
Senator Shriki?
the A, B, and C would all be, my amendments still all stand.
So we are going to pursue that separately?
Yes, ma'am, should it please you.
Senator Ramdin, you wanted to raise something? In respect of what was just put by the Attorney General?
Well, I thought that we were dealing with clause 6.1 alone, but the AG has expanded that to encompass all of the subsections. So I don't know.
I stopped. So I dealt with 6.1 and 3 only.
Separately?
Yeah, so under Senator Shriki 6.1, which caused the...
So you were doing them separately?
Yes.
Okay, good. But I don't have anything else to say on 6.1.
So I am, yes, Senator Mark?
I just wanted to ask, through you, the Honorable Attorney General, seeing that the bulk of the persons, or from my research, are involved in gang activities are young people. I was wondering, for instance, the rationale for these sentences, 10 years and subsequent conviction on indictment to 20 years. You want to share with us what is the rationale, the thinking behind these provisions as it relates to these years that have been proposed in 6 sub 3? And then as we go along, I'd like to ask you to clarify even further, because I find some of these a bit, strong in terms of it's young people that would be involved. And as you know, AG, you have advised already that it takes 20 to 25,000 hours per person to take care of these people. And then you talk about hundreds of millions
Senator Mark,
that would have to be.
We've gotten the gist of your question. Senator Ramdin, you wanted to raise something?
Well, yeah, if the AG is going to respond to Senator Mark with respect to that particular, one of the things that I wanted to raise is in relation to that. So I don't know if you want, as a matter of efficiency, to deal with it one time.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay. Attorney General, respectfully, there are 3 sets of sentences that I see here. You have one 25 years under subsection 2, 20 years and 10 years under 3, and you have 25 years and 30 years. Is there is there some kind of rationale, and when I say, is there some kind of rationale as to why we are differentiating it? And the reason why I say so is for the purpose of suggesting, first of all, under subsection 3, I don't know whether I am in error in reading it the way it is read literally, but the section reads, a person who commits an offense under, with your amendment, it will be B, C, and D, is liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 10 years. So that takes care of a first offender under a summary conviction. Is you with me?
20 years.
No. When you go to subsection 3,
Yes.
you're capturing for a person who commits an offense on summary conviction for a breach of B, C,
Yes,
or
yes,
D.
yes, I'm with you. I apologize. I
The
was at the
punishment
end.
is 10 years.
Yes, yes.
And then the section reads, and on a subsequent conviction on indictment to imprisonment for 20 years. Now, I don't know if that is really the intent of what the section is supposed to think, because I think the section is really supposed to capture somebody who is convicted a second time. But the way it reads is that the second conviction, which is a 20-year conviction, sorry, the 20-year sentence,
Yes.
will only be if the second conviction is on indictment.
Yes.
I don't know that that is what we want to do.
Well,
I don't know if that is what you want to do, but what I want to suggest is that whether the second conviction be summary or indictable, that what we should do is be capturing a second conviction either way, which is not what the section, as I read it,
You're correct.
captures.
You're
Now,
correct.
I want to suggest this as well. If we are going to be serious about this gang activity and this gang violence, we can't be sentencing somebody on a second conviction for an offense under this act for 20 years, Attorney General, respectfully. You have section 68 that allows you to set a maximum in all of these things. They are all maximums the way they are interpreted under section 68 of the Interpretation Act. And I want to suggest strongly that the government considers that on a second conviction for somebody who commits an offense under this act, they be sentenced, let us set the sentence as natural life. Let the court determine less than that. The natural life offense has been, as you know, recently given legal justification by the Privy Council in Bullock and all those cases, and let us set it as that. Because you cannot have somebody committing this kind of offense that we are saying is the scourge of society, and you're giving them 20 years for a second conviction. I just think it is not strong enough. And let the courts determine whether, in the circumstances of each particular case on sentencing, having considered mitigating and aggravating factors, it can be less than that. But in the very extreme case, if you have a very extreme case of a gang leader committing an offense a second time, he could be responsible for the deaths and firearm and for a lot of people. And I don't suggest that on a second conviction that we set the maximum as 20 years. I just don't think it's serious enough.
Madam Chair, I genuinely want to thank Senator Ramdeen for opening up this position. Permit me to explain. It isn't that the government has arrived here without a particular run-up. In getting this bill to passage, we were constrained to have agreement in the House of Representatives. And the position offered to us then, and I'm not pouring any scorn on how we got there. I'm glad we're here now. But in getting there, the recommendation to us was keep the bill as it was, as close to what it was before. And therefore, we repeated in this clause what the 2011 law looked like. And that's what the JSC had done, etc. I myself, and this is as an individual, I can't speak for more than an individual, welcome Senator Ramdeen's recommendation. I think we should treat with this thing in a very serious way. For that reason, in my own redrafting of the anti-gang laws, I had put in interim freezing orders for gang property. It's a whole host of other civil law remedies to actually grab at the money behind gang activity. So on this particular purpose here, I welcome the fact that it can be done on summary conviction, the second offense. That's the first point. And I think that's a wonderful suggestion, subject to what other senators have to say. I'm particularly interested in the most experienced criminal practitioner here, which is Senator Choate's view on this. Secondly, the natural life philosophy, again, is something which I could easily welcome because it's a second offense. But again, this has to be the will of a Senate. We were constrained in how the matter was dealt with in the House of Representatives by the arguments we met opposite, but we're in a different place now. So may I ask for views, Madam Chair?
Yeah, just before, Senator Choate, you are going to comment on the sentencing as well?
I am.
Yes,
Madam
all right.
Chairman.
I have a suggestion, though, before we deal with the sentencing, let's deal with 6.1. And let us deal with that for housekeeping purposes, and then we move on to the other subclauses of Clause 6.
Sure.
Okay? So, honorable senators, the question is that Clause 6.1 be amended as follows. 6.1b, delete the word or. Insert a new 6.1c, which reads as follows: performs an act as a condition for membership in a gang, or 6.1d will now read, professes to be a gang leader or a gang member in order to, (1) gain a benefit for himself or another person, (2) intimidate other persons, or 3, promotes a gang, promote a gang, commits an offense. Promote a gang, comma, commits an offense, full stop. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Clause 6.1 has been amended as I have just read out. Okay? We now move on to Clause 6.2. And that is where, Senator Choate, I'm going to invite your comments because you are talking about the sentence. Senator Obika.
I was trying to attract your attention before you put it to a vote regarding 6.1. I was trying to, my hand was up.
Go ahead.
Right, so, my concern, Madam Chair, is regarding the fact that someone could be sentenced to the natural life for simply being a gang member. I think if, because that is 6.1, a person who is
Yes,
be
but,
a gang
but,
member.
but Senator Obika, we haven't reached theirs yet. That is why I stopped at 6.1, which it ends with the offenses that will result in committing an offense. Okay? We haven't dealt with the sentencing as yet. Okay?
Right, but what I'm saying is that I think that that offense should not be captured. Permit my ignorance, right? Because I really...
No, go ahead.
Right, so I'm saying that if we say that we deal with the sentences, the offenses, and then after you decide what the sentences are.
Yes.
I'm saying that being a gang member must not be an offense that will allow you to face natural life imprisonment. I think because that you could be the last person in the gang.
So what is your suggestion, Senator Obika?
I think that we should critically evaluate which offenses would result in someone being getting sentenced for life. Because really and truly, I can't in good conscience.
I still think
agree,
that you are mixing up issues.
Just a little premature.
It is, as we go down, we will then deal with the sentencing. But I really want to, at this stage, I really need to say something. I am painstakingly trying to incorporate all members' views. And you notice the word painstakingly because it is not easy to record all the different amendments, and we have numerous amendments. So that your point, Senator Obika, is coming a little late after all of the commentary that we were dealing with. And therefore, I'm not going to reopen Clause 6.1. We have taken a vote on it. I ask all members to please pay attention as we proceed. And I will always entertain comments once you put your hand up and engage me at the relevant time. Okay? All right. So Clause 6.1 has been amended. We now go on to Clauses 6.2, 3, 4, etc. Senator Choate, you had a comment to make on the sentencing aspect.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's with respect to 6.3. I see the difficulty in the language because as it's drafted there, it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's necessary to talk about what will happen on a subsequent conviction, because when you are first convicted, it is almost impossible for you to get the full sentence, the maximum sentence. But if you are convicted a second and a third time, then your sentence moves up. So I don't see that it is necessary for us to deal with subsequent convictions in this particular piece of legislation. But there is a more important reason for not supporting it as it's worded, and that is because what you are saying is that if someone is a gang member and you are convicted and you receive a sentence, then you are charged a second time for being a gang member and you get a heavier sentence. But you may have actually performed minor criminal activity while you were a gang member, but you will be facing the same penalty because it's not your activity that is being considered here. It's your membership of the gang. So you may face the same heavy penalty as, let's say, a gang member who is a hitman. So it leads to an unfair application of the law, in my respectful view. It's disproportionate in that sense. The other thing is, I think that what we can do to correct it is simply to say is liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 10 years and on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for 20 years, and simply remove the whole issue, the troublesome issue of subsequent conviction. This whole thing about life imprisonment, I disagree totally with that. Let us be realistic. The easiest targets for this legislation when it comes into effect will be the street gangs. And they are the most vulnerable and the most dispossessed in society. I don't imagine that the first charge will be a chairman of any corporation conducting an illegal activity. And I do think that the application of the law and the impact on any particular group in society must be considered when we come to the creation of sentences such as these. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cho, through you, Madam Chair, for the reflection upon the proportionality. I do believe that Parliament in its wisdom ought to contemplate a second conviction, because the phenomenon of street gang, and well, we're beyond street gang, we've gone into the economic zone by our own law, but the phenomenon of gangs is driving the vast amount of criminality that we're experiencing. It's true that there may be rank and file, from foot soldiers up to generals. So not only is the intention, I think, not only should the intention be made clear that we wish gang activity to be suppressed and eradicated, and for that reason, a recommendation that Parliament intended on a second bite that you be treated with, because the petty criminal who associates himself with the criminal gang hitman knows that he's a criminal gang hitman, and therefore the gang flourishes because the base continues to associate itself with the top, and therefore that phenomenon drives a culture in and of itself. Society needs to be made aware, don't mess with this area of the law. Do not associate yourself with a gang. So from that perspective, I think that there are two polar positions. I do understand the caution offered that persons who are most dispossessed in society may find themselves caught into this web, but then again, they must be told otherwise. Relative to the concept of natural life, it's appealing, but then the issue of excessive criminalization comes in. I accept Senator Ramdeen's caution, quite properly put forward, that it's just a maximum sentence indicator, Section 68 of the Interpretation Act, and the Privy Council dicta in the Bullock case in particular. So I'm not sure if that addresses part of the concern, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairman, if I may, Honorable Attorney General, I urge you to consider this clause with some restraint. And I think I have good reason in my mind for urging you to do so, because we can always return and amend the sentencing aspect of this act to deal with subsequent convictions.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at this thing the wrong way around. It's not the base pushing the head up or the gang leader pushing the base forward. Gang leaders report to people. And we are punishing part of a criminal organization because, as I said, the first targets will be the street gangs. So we are punishing the part of a criminal organization, and we are hitting it with the heaviest penalty that we can think about. We are taking away people's liberty, and we are doing so for very long periods of time. And for that reason, I respectfully ask you to reconsider your position with respect to this.
Madam Chair, just to make it clear before Senator Mark jumps in or whomever else, I don't have a position at all. I wanted to encourage the Senate's fulmination on it. The only position that I would ask honourable senators to consider is the need for a second offence, a different treatment on second offence. Why? And the square rationale is because of the vagaries of judicial sentencing, notwithstanding the publication of a book by the Judicial Education Institute, notwithstanding the publication of judicial sentencing, the magistracy and the High Court and judges within, officers within, have very widely varying approaches. I do hear the Honourable Senator about hitting the full maximum point. In fact, what we did in respect of kidnapping for ransom or firearms, etc., was a tiered approach in the history of our parliaments, back-to-back parliaments. And indeed, Senator Baptiste Primus is cautioning the same. So I haven't formed a view on that, but I'm welcoming the views of senators before the government expresses a particular view or not on a recommendation. I understood what Senator Ramdeen had put out in the context that he did, and there's persuasion in the methodology he's put out. And I do understand what the Honourable Senator is saying, but I would like to hear the views of all.
Yeah, may I suggest, of course, subject to other persons who may have to speak, may I suggest that we come back to this particular clause?
We could settle it now.
No, well, let us not rush to settle it now. And that's what I'm suggesting, Madam Chair, that we come back to this. Let us give it some thought. Let us have some further discussions on it before we take a decision. Because I don't want to, my position is very clear on these matters. I made it very clear in my contribution.
Sorry.
So as far as this clause is concerned, Madam Chair, well, no, I believe that this is a matter that we need to further prosecute and discuss.
Okay, let me just ask, Senator Choate, your comments were directed at clause 6.3, correct?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
6.3. Senator Mark, your comments are directed at all of the clauses that deal with the...
Dealing with right now.
All
I'm
right.
focused on 6.3.
So you're dealing with 6.3.
Yeah.
So may I ask if we can deal with clause 6.2? Because no one has raised an issue with respect to clause 6.2. Senator Ramdeen.
Just express, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to express a similar concern about 6.2. If we are going to accept the position that is disproportionate to consider long sentences for persons who are lower down in the rank, then you have 25 years for the gang leader, right? Later on in the legislation, in the same section, you have 35 years for a gang leader who wounds or causes grievous bodily harm to a member of law enforcement. And I just think, Attorney General, if it is we accept the position that the persons lower down we should be a little bit more lenient on them. I don't necessarily accept that view, but I'm saying let's assume that is the position. I don't see what is the rationale of the figure 25 years for a gang leader. This is the man at the top. This is the man leading the gang in. This is the man causing people to be killed in and outside of prison, calling his shot on people, witnesses, right? You cannot be serious about setting our gang leaders maximum offence at 25 years. Let us give the court the power to prescribe the large. All right. If we're setting this law like this, we have to consider that you will have people at one end of the scale, you will have people at the other end of the scale. You might have a gang leader in Laventille who have a gang that have 5 members in it. You might have a man who owns a whole neighborhood calling the shot on people, right? You can't let us apply this law to somebody who we have an example of. If you had to apply this to Dolce, you give him 25 years, who running up the biggest criminal organization perhaps in the Caribbean. Let us be serious. We will lose the opportunity, Attorney General, to put away people who we need to be putting away behind bars for very long periods of time. If you set the maximum at 25 years, to be convicted under this, you have to be convicted of being a gang leader, and that in and of itself should entitle you to your liberty being taken away for a very long time. And we're not asking that this is what you are going to get if you are convicted necessarily. The court will take into consideration what are the facts before it, right? What kind of criminal organization you run in, how many members, whatever the evidence might be. But I cannot subscribe to sit here and say, let us put 25 years. What is the rationale for the 25 years? Somebody who is involved in this kind of thing that responsible for the loss of life of people should be entitled to lose their life, as far as I am concerned.
All right, so may I summarize what I'm hearing, Attorney General? Senator Choate, you are expressing reservations about the subsequent conviction on indictment in Clause 3. Am I correct?
That is so.
Senator Mark, you're expressing concerns about all of the sentences which you find are too high. Yes? Senator Ramdi, you are saying that some of the sentences are not high enough. Yes.
Time being to 2.
Right, yes,
Yeah.
but I'm summarizing
Of
because
course.
we're dealing with 2 and 3 right now, it seems. Senator Small.
Thank you, Madam President, for allowing me to, Madam Chair, forgive me. I want to support Madam Chair, that the view of the average citizen in this country, who is under pain of understanding that their life and liberty is at threat almost at any moment in this country. When you think about somebody being a gang leader and the process to get them convicted, I struggle to know that that person will face a maximum of 25 years. Perhaps I read too many newspapers. I'm looking at one now where a gang leader in Florida got 65 years in jail, which effectively means he will never threaten anybody again. So that I think that I agree with the fact that you have to probably look at tiers in terms of how you do the sentencing. But I think that a message needs to be sent to the persons at the top. And I think that a limit of 25 years is difficult to support as it is. I think that it has to be another number. On the issue raised in 6.3, if you permit me, Madam Chair, I think that the issue of subsequent convictions is important from where I sit, because I think that a lot of times you could probably almost give people a pass for the first offense, but a subsequent offense, I think it needs to be captured. So how it is, I support the matter of the subsequent conviction as it is in the current provision, but I would urge that the AG and his team look at for a gang leader, 25 years seems almost a slap on the wrist.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Obika.
go first, I can allow him.
No, I'm calling on you, Senator
Okay.
Obika.
All right,
Yes.
thanks. Madam Chair, now that we reached the point that actually I was speaking of without knowing it, now that we are speaking of different sentences, I believe that for the gang leader, that the maximum should be given. And unfortunately, I've been informed that we can't prescribe a death penalty. But if you are a gang leader of a major gang, I think even 25 years, because you can commit your crimes even from prison. So it still becomes dangerous for the persons who would have stood witness against you on the outside. They won't be able to live in Trinidad whilst you are in prison. So I'm only sad that we can't prescribe the death penalty, but I think we should go to the maximum for the gang leaders. Yeah.
Just to just bolster what I was saying, Attorney General, and to just add to what Senator Small is saying, I think we are all forgetting that when you are sentenced to 25 years, you're really not doing 25, you're doing 1/3, you're doing 2/3 of 25. So you're doing 16. So the idea, right, and that is how it works in prison, you will know that. When you apply the remission to the sentence, you're doing 15 or 16 years. So you are a gang leader who we here sitting down and thinking doing 25 years, when it's really 16 years you're doing.
If he gets that much, if he gets the maximum.
I'm talking about the maximum.
Understood.
Right?
Yeah.
So we must take into consideration, and while we can argue that that remission is discretionary, it doesn't operate like that in the prison system.
Correct.
You're entitled to 1/3 off.
Yes.
And therefore, as we speak, you then take into consideration that this 25 that we're talking about is really 16. So a man can literally commit this kind of offense being a gang leader and come back out and do it again. He might run the criminal enterprise and get bigger while in prison.
Particularly if pre-trial custody is then
Attorney
counted
General,
into it as well.
Under 69A, by virtue of the Interpretation Act, right? Let us give the court the power. Put him there in life and let the court prescribe the minimum period he must stay.
Madam Chair, if I could say to Senator Ramdeen, he and I often think alike on certain points, but I don't make law for
You hear that,
myself. I'm very interested in the other views, in particular the independent bench, which is a little quiet.
You wanted to say something?
Yes, please. And this will be the last comment I make on it. Listening to some of these comments and indeed listening to debate, I realize that how sometimes people in power operate within a vacuum and don't appreciate what the reality is for someone who might be considered a gang leader or a gang member. What penalty is there, if I put it another way, what penalty is there for the businessman who pays the gang leader to carry out a hit on someone, whether it's his wife or his business rival? Where is that included? And if the gang leader is getting life or more than 25 years, where is the punishment for such a person?
Clause
Where
7.
is the punishment for the politician
Clause 7.
who pays a gang leader or a gang member to do something unlawful on his behalf?
Clause 7. And 9 as well.
25 years?
Yeah, well, we haven't
So
come to
the
that.
same?
I was dealing with the point of where is it? The springboard is at clauses 7 and 9. So there are two springboards in law in the bill. As to the prescription of the penalty, I'm listening to you.
Yes. So, well, I think it's kind of difficult to look at one without the other, so I will refer to it with the chairman's leave. But 7 is where you are encouraging, basically you're trying to drag somebody, you're drawing somebody into gang membership. So 7 doesn't help us.
It's aids or abets, coerces, encourages, entices. We're going to consider facilitation and then aids and abets, because Senator Shrikisuna's proposed facilitation. And 9, a person who knowingly counsels, gives instruction or guidance to a gang leader, gang member, gang in furtherance of its participation, etc. So 9 is rather specific in its purpose.
Yes, well, I think we can't read them as meaning the same thing, because obviously one is trying to drag somebody in, and 9 is the one who comes, which comes closest to what I think you are talking about. But it is in furtherance of gang-related activity. What about if you're if you hire somebody to do something outside what is the gang's, what you would consider to be that gang's gang-related activity.
Well, there is always the complication of how one charges, what the police has in its bucket of evidence to offer a charge within the known law, statutory or common law. But the point is that there is certainly formula inside of this law for some of it. There may not be a perfect scenario for every aspect of it, but we do have the springboards. What I'm catching from Senator Ramdeen, and which I find quite persuasive, is the discretion of the court is the ultimate arbiter as to what a sentence is, both under the Interpretation Act and by the Privy Council's ultimate ruling in the Bullock case most recently. From that purpose, therefore, and the average person listening on to this debate will not appreciate the discounting of sentencing. A year in prisons, which the attorneys will know, is not a 12-month period, and there's a discount factor that is applied. It may be 9 months. There may even be time which is cut off of your sentence because of your pre-trial incarceration in certain circumstances. So it's true that a 25 years may in fact be 15 years or 16 years as it goes. And there may be merit, depending upon the ultimate view of the Senate, to providing a maximum from which the discretion can be applied. But again, I'm waiting to hear from you, Madam Chair.
Senator Choate, yes, you have something to add?
I'm sorry, but you see, the mandatory maximum, that has already been declared unconstitutional. Remember, it existed.
But we agree with that. We're saying that the mandatory maximum is not,
right.
You get that. We're saying the opposite of that. What we're saying in reference to Bullock and to discounting sentences is that mandatory maximum is not what you get. You get something under that.
Right. And the thing is, every person charged with a serious criminal offense, including the taking of human life, conspiracy to murder, and so on, every person gets that same remission for good behavior if you are entitled to it in your prison sentence. So why are we isolating these offenders for these disproportionate punishments, first of all? And secondly, when someone has the time spent in custody taken into account when he comes up to be sentenced, it is not that he is avoiding his sentence. The court is admitting that he has served his sentence before he was even tried because of the incarceration, and there is no remission on remand. So you have, in a sense, started to serve your sentence before you even came to trial. So let us be clear about what we are talking about when we are talking about taking away people's liberties. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Honourable Senators, I think that there has been sufficient discussion on these aspects of Clause 6. Attorney General, I will take the break now, which will allow you some time to whether you are going to incorporate some of the suggestions that have been made, and we will suspend the proceedings at this stage. I just want to say we are suspending for the Attorney General to determine how we are going to be proceeding and not reopening the substantive and substantial debate we have had on this clause, okay? So we will suspend the proceedings of this committee and return at 10 minutes past 2.
Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
The Parliament Chamber